Are Big Ben and Randall Cobb contenders for your fantasy lineup this week? And can the Browns pull off this first win of the season against the Ravens Thursday night? Will Ty Montgomery be limited to a snap count this week? And Tony Romo is officially healthy, but will the Cowboys give him the green light and start him over rookie Dak Prescott? All this and more coming up on our ranking show next on the Fantasy Dopes podcast. Hey Dope Heads, welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Dopes podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Parker, and I've got some exciting news for you tonight. And no, it has nothing to do with the presidential election, thank God. All three of the Dope Heads happen to be in the house tonight for the first time in a few weeks. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Now, I don't need to tell you who your obvious starts are for this week because they're probably the same guys you've been starting since week one. However, we've got the Bills, the Lions, the Colts, and the Raiders all on bye this week, and we know you might want a little help deciphering who the better matchup is for the week, whether it's somebody you picked up or if it's one of those guys who's been collecting dust on your bench for the last couple weeks. And to help me help you with all of that, I'm going to welcome back the father figure and new dad of two, Michael, back to the podcast, and our very own guru, John Fazio. Hey, guys.
Hello, Jillian. It's wonderful to hear your voice. Great to have you back, and it's great to be back. I got to listen to you guys while I was in the hospital. Listen to the podcast.
Wow.
And I played it.
That's super committed.
Yeah, I had it playing while we were delivering my child. So it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
That's great to hear, Michael. I'm glad you're well versed in our podcast universe, and we've gained, I think, about 5 or 10 new audience members. So we're actually gaining a little bit of an audience now. So how about that?
I love it. I love it. I did legitimately have the TV was on in the delivery room. It was perfectly situated, and the Jets Dolphin game was on during the whole delivery. That's the truth. So that was good. I swear.
Look at you, sneaking in those football games as your baby's getting delivered.
I gotta get the info. We got dopes to feed.
That's amazing.
Yes, we do, and I appreciate your dedication.
Always.
Your poor wife, was she like screaming at you to turn off the TV?
No, I don't think she was paying. I don't think she realized the game was on. I didn't have the volume up.
It makes sense that wasn't her first priority.
Yeah.
Smooth move.
Well, it's great to have you back. Me and you haven't been on a podcast together in a while.
It's been forever.
It has.
Too long. Well, let's get it. We got a action-packed show, I think, and a lot of information. So
we do.
And I have a baby to feed, so let's get to it.
All right, then we'll just get right to it. We're gonna start with our smoke 'em if you got 'em.
Nice doobie, bro.
And first up, John, you have LeGarrette Blount listed. And why? See, for me, he is my number one running back on my team every week. So why do you got him listed here tonight?
Well, I didn't want to put him in our obvious starts category. He is going up against the Seattle defense. I know LaShawn McCoy rushed for over 80 yards on Monday Night Football in Seattle against them, and he was hampered a bit. So it was pretty gutsy for them to even start him in the first place, and for him to gain over 80 yards was pretty good in itself. But Blount here, I feel like this is an appropriate spot. He's just been a scoring machine for the Patriots. He's actually gotten into the end zone 9 times so far this season before hitting their Week 9 bye last week. Now, even though, like I said, this is a tough matchup, they're going to rely on Blount to get the offense rolling. You have to think he gets into the end zone at least one time, even if it's like a 2 or 1 yard scamper. So I just don't see him rushing for over 80, 90 yards in this game. I think the defense will kind of clamp down on him. And there's a guy coming back who we'll get to in just a short bit that I'll be talking about that may also be taking some time away from him in the backfield.
I think that's fair. As you said, he's a touchdown machine. I don't see anyone not starting him unless you're loaded at the running back position, but that's fair with this mystery person coming back. I think you have a good spot for him right here, so I'll allow it.
Well, thank you, Michael. We're already getting on a good pace so far.
John tries to tell me that you guys don't agree when I'm not on the podcast.
It's true.
Is it?
We quibble.
We butt heads.
Oh.
Michael, Tell us about Darren Sproles.
All right. Well, there's no longer any question. There's no controversy. Darren Sproles is the lead featured back for the Eagles. Now, that being said, Sproles has yet to find the end zone this year on the ground. So, it's questionable how much him being the lead guy is going to make a difference. But Carson Wentz should be able to get something going in the air against the Atlanta defense. Most people can. And if that happens, it should open it up even more for the little man out of Kansas State. So I feel pretty good about Sproles this week. Not a big change from last week, but against Atlanta, I think he's worthwhile.
Yeah, Atlanta usually gives up a ton of yards against running backs this year, and just pretty much in the last couple of years anyway. But if you have scoring in punt returns and kickoffs, Sproles is also seen in that field as well. So if you got him and you got those points gathered up into your lineups, you can definitely get some major points from him. And especially in PPR, he catches a bunch of balls out of the backfield as well. And with Ryan Matthews slipping in this backfield, there's no reason that Sproles should get about 20 carries and some even more looks in the passing game. So I like him. I'm starting him in a bunch of leagues. I got him. It's the right move, Herbert.
I agree.
We're 2 for 2 so far. Let's keep it going.
Let's see how
We're just
long that
loaded
lasts.
up with running backs here tonight, so let's just take it to the next running back in Kansas City.
Yeah, so Spencer Ware, he actually passed the Leafs concussion protocol on Wednesday, and he practiced in full. Didn't even have a limited participation. He was ready to roll, and he's pretty much going to be starting for the for the Chiefs this coming weekend against the Panthers. Now they are in Carolina, so I wasn't going to put him straight up into an obvious start list, but he should see his normal workload, and Charkandrick West will back him up a bit just to give him a breather. But again, if you got him, you start him. Unless you have two studs that are in the obvious starts list, maybe you could throw him in your flex. But I like him coming off the concussion. He seems ready to go and should at least get 80 yards in this game.
Yeah, listen, the Carolina defense at home is going to be tough. Certainly bad news for the Shar West owners. Certainly, I'm not starting Shar West at all with this matchup. But Spencer Ware hopefully is back and healthy, and he is going to be back and healthy. So we'll see.
3 for 3.
Oh boy, should I start tallying this up?
Well, I think we're tallying it for you.
Yeah, seriously, just don't even have to worry about it. Well, next up we've got Ty Montgomery on the list, and he was limited to a snap count this week. Is that this past week? Is that going to be happening again this weekend?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it was just more or less him trying to get used to being back onto the field. I think he's going to have an increased role with the Packers this Sunday against the Titans. And even though James Starks may come back for this game, their original backup, I should say, I just still see Montgomery seeing the majority of the carries. And obviously his value in the wide receiver spot is still there as well. So James Starks, he was pretty bad when he was the backup. And even when he started, I believe, for like half a game, he had average around 2 yards per carry. And even in his career with the Packers, he hasn't really shown that much speed or burst. So with Montgomery, he's just got that dual threat. It's hard to ignore. So, I mean, if you got him in a wide receiver or running back spot, you got to fire him up in there.
Yeah.
I sense the tally.
I'm not sure that I'm quite as high on him this week. I mean, you have Starks back. They're in Tennessee. I'm a little concerned that Montgomery might lose some carries to Starks, and I don't know where he's going to end up in the receiving game at all. So, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. But Green Bay is getting healthier. They got a lot of options now, so I'm not sure. I'm going to wait and see here, but I'm not sure if I'd have him quite this high, but we shall see.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you're alluding to Randall Cobb. I know we mentioned him in our next category, but he's still limited. I don't think he's going to be completely 100%. He's probably not going to see every snap as well. So you got to think that Montgomery is going to be out in the field for a bunch of plays, not only in the backfield, but in the wide receiver split. So I just like the opportunity he presents, but it's a fair point to be a little judgmental. I can see the other side of this conversation. So
I guess, yeah, I'm more concerned about him moving forward. We'll see how it all progresses, but I guess I have some concern about him being my go-to starting running back for the rest of the year, but we'll see.
Yeah, and Green Bay, like you said, they've got a lot more options now, and we know New England has the most options in football. Is Dion Lewis another one this week?
Yeah, so this is the guy I was kind of alluding to. I knew we would get him to him right away. All this waiting for these owners that had him, and it's about to pay off. There's a chance he doesn't play in this game, however, but if he is active, I say he should be in lineups. I think this guy is Bill Belichick's love child. And he's come out and said that he really likes him, even though he's torn his ACL last year and he has been on the field for over a year. I still think they're going to get him the ball no matter what, because the Patriots like to hide these injuries. They always list guys questionable, and he's been practicing for a couple of weeks now. He practiced during the bye, and he was back at practice on Wednesday. But I still think if he's active, Belichick's going to basically run him to the ground, essentially, and James White becomes irrelevant on the team. So that's just my gut feeling. I like him a lot, but again, if he's not active, or they come out and say that he's on a snap count, which I doubt because the Patriots don't usually release that kind of information prior to games, then I would bench him and just wait and see how he does. I'm sure Michael doesn't agree with this one just because of his injury.
Yeah, well, listen, I definitely think that you need to get him on your team if you can. It's been a year, like you said, so hard for me to get a good gauge on where he's at. You do have Blount there as well, so we'll see. PPR league, more value. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how this one plays out.
I agree. He's definitely more valuable in PPR.
We'll break up the little running back trend we've got going on here and talk about a tight end who went off in Dallas this week. Jason Witten, but who will be throwing to him this weekend?
I just want to mention, too, as we're going along in these lists, I have tight ends listed at the end of each of these categories now. I've heard a couple of people that were listening to the podcast say that it was good that we added the tight ends in here, but they said it was more helpful for them to see them at the end of the list so they know exactly where tight ends are listed and that they can accurately put them in their lineups according to risk. So just a little disclaimer there. We'll mention tight ends at the end of each category. But getting back to Witten and their quarterback situation, as you said earlier in the open, Tony Romo is pretty much almost back to being on the practice field. And I said this a couple weeks ago. I still stick by it. Dak Prescott has been the greatest NFL story this year out of any other player or team so far. I mean, a rookie guy. Romo gets injured in preseason. This guy was ignored for most of camp and OTAs, and all of a sudden now is one of the budding stars of the NFL. So he's shown a great chemistry with Witten. He had over 130 yards last week. It was the first time he had over 100 yards since 2013. So
wow.
He's been kind of his safety blanket along with Cole Beasley, and I just think that they're building a chemistry all together, and if Romo comes in, I'm not discrediting Romo, I just feel like this is Dak's team to lose, and they have to ride with him until the very end, in my opinion.
Well, I certainly hope they do, because I have him starting in one of my leagues, so I do hope they do.
Good for you, Glenn Coco.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, listen, Witten's no newcomer to fantasy football. I think most people know who he is. He's been around a long time. Obviously, a top 10 fantasy tight end. So there you go. He had a great game, no doubt. We'll see. As did Jason Graham, by the way. Did you see those catches? Those one-handed catches on Monday night?
Oh, the one-handed catches.
Unbelievable. So, yeah. So I feel like this is the week of the tight end. But, yeah, certainly I think he's always a solid start.
All right, and that does it for our Smoke 'em If You Got 'em category. And we're going to move on to our Safe Bets picks. First up, Devontae Booker.
Yeah, so I'm hesitant to start him in any leagues I own him. I have him in one of my leagues, and I just feel like this guy, again, like we're going through these like roller coasters with running backs where their backup comes in, he's great for a couple of games, and then all of a sudden he just completely lays down, And then the backup, the next backup, it's just like a never-ending step stool of guys just coming up and off the stool. So I mean, with Booker, a lot of the writers seem to think that Bibbs is going to be more involved in this game, and there's a chance that there could be a similar situation that unfolds like what happened with the Saints backfield last week between Ingram and Tim Hightower. So Booker and Bibbs could be in line for a good game. And if I had to choose with a gun to my head, I'd say Booker would probably have a better fantasy day just because they're going into New Orleans, a soft defense, and obviously a high-scoring team on the other side. But I'm not comfortable starting Booker this week. How about you, Herbie?
I think if you have him, you're excited that he finally got the chance to be the guy, and now you've already got Bibbs breathing down his neck. So I think you put him in this week if you have him. You got to see what happens this week. And like so many of these situations, they're extremely fluid week to week. So if you have him, you've invested in him, you've held him for a couple weeks here, I think you got to put him out there. Obviously depends on who you got. Do I put him as a flex option? Probably not. But a lower end number 2 running back, I think that's fair. And speaking of New Orleans and Tim Hightower, Mark Ingram, we've spoken a lot about it. I think you guys talked a lot about it last week or earlier in the week in the recap.
Yep.
The bad news is that it appears Hightower's here to stay for sure, at least for the foreseeable future. The good news is Ingram still holds fantasy value. I believe he showed it last week. Had 15 rushes, 158 yards, a touchdown, and added a receiving touchdown as well for good measure, all against the subpar 49ers defense. They made those Saints running backs look amazing. So I think you have to temper your excitement if you are Hightower and or Ingram owners and watched that game last week. Faces a much tougher opponent, Week 10, home against the Broncos. It is worth noting that the vaunted Denver defense was made to look somewhat pedestrian last week against the Raiders, yielding over 100 rushing yards to Latavius Murray and 3 touchdowns. 3, John.
Yeah, I believe all 3 of those touchdowns were for a gain of 1 yard, if I'm not mistaken.
Were they all 1-yarders?
I think so. I know 2 of the 3 were at least, but in any case, I whiffed on Murray last week. That was definitely a whiff on my part, but I agree. I think Ingram will still be the starter from here on out. Hightower will be their change of pace back. He'll be involved in the passing game a little bit more, but certainly both guys are definitely startable. I think Ingram's more of an RB2, whereas Hightower's a flex play. I don't really see Hightower in an RB 1 or 2 situation unless Ingram gets injured. But I agree. I mean, Denver defense, they're not too great against running backs. So if you want to, take your chances, I'd rather go Ingram over Hightower if you really had to. But I would try to get both of those guys in there.
Yeah, I agree with Ingram over Hightower. But again, like everything else, fluid situation. So,
well, I'm not mad that Hightower's here to stay because I have him on my team, but I am a little mad that Julian Edelman is going against the Seahawks this week.
Julian Edelman.
Is it Jillian Edelman?
It is actually, yeah.
He changed his name. His name.
Well, for you, Jillian, this game script doesn't favor him. Going up against one of the toughest secondaries in the league in the Seahawks. They are at New England, so you got to like the chances of the Patriots and Tom Brady throwing it up. But he is more valuable in PPR than he is in standard. I mean, he should have at least 4 or 5 catches in this game. I know they're usually short yardage, which is why I'm hesitant to start him. But I'm not seeing like a 100-yard game from him. Is basically what I'm trying to say. And if they do get a wide receiver that gets open in space, it's probably either going to be Rob Gronkowski, obviously, or their other guy, Chris Hogan. So tough spot for Edelman. I mean, I understand his name and his appeal in PPR, but if I'm in standard, I'm benching him.
Yeah, there's so many mouths to feed there, and Brady is he's going to feed everyone here and there in different games, but again, to trust and feel confident he's going to go in and get you 10, 15 points, Yeah, not so sure about that.
Well, I'm sorry, for standard leagues, he hasn't had double-digit points all year, and we're
Really?
going into the
That's
10th week.
terrible.
Yeah,
That's
he
just
came
terrible.
real close last week, but
But this is standard scoring, correct?
standard scoring, correct. He only had over 70 yards once. Most of the time, it's been under 50. So,
It sounds
and
like
then-
he might not even be a safe bet then.
well, he got his first touchdown of the season last week, but yeah,
I don't know. I think with his PPR value alone puts him
Sure.
in this
for
safe
sure.
it's
We
just
say
a
that all
safe
the
play.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's always a chance that this guy can completely dud out. I'm just saying he's just of his name and his value alone is just the reason why he's safe, quote unquote safe. But again, I'm not looking to start him in any leagues.
Well, from one questionable start of mine to another, Randall Cobb. How do we think he's feeling for this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, we touched up on him with Ty Montgomery, but he's practicing in a limited capacity at least he did on Wednesday. But they do expect him to play this weekend against the Titans. They still probably bothered by that hamstring, as you can tell with being only limited in practice, but he should be in most of this game rather than in one half like he was last week against the Colts. I know it was pretty disappointing for owners. Luckily, he saved somewhat of the game when he got into the end zone, but he only had 2 catches in that game, so I could see owners, maybe wanting to wait another week for him to recover and try to take a chance on somebody else. But he will get more playing opportunities, so he should get a couple more passes than 2 or catches than 2.
Yeah, the reports out of Green Bay were that the good news is he did not re-injure anything. He made it through the game, those 2 plays without any irritation. So that's good news. Another week of practice or limited practice. Hopefully he's healthier and can contribute. So
Yeah, hopefully he gets back because he was pretty on fire prior to getting injured.
yeah, he was. He had a good little run there.
He did.
Oh sure.
Oh, sure. Moving on to Terrell Williams.
Yes, so even though Tyrell missed practice on Wednesday, he should be able to play on Sunday against the Dolphins. Now, he's still kind of bothered by his knee a little bit, but he looked just fine last weekend against the Titans. He's their speedster guy, didn't lose a step, got into the end zone, so should give him a boost too, since Travis Benjamin will most likely miss this game because he's also dealing with a PCL injury. And surprisingly started the game last week, but he did have to come out later in the game. So I think they were just trying to rush him back. That was a stupid move because now it might cost him a week or 2. But I really like Tyrell Williams in a nice spot. Again, I would probably play him over Cobb and Edelman, in my opinion, because they're in San Diego and they're going against the Dolphins, who aren't that great on the secondary side. Herbert, am I wrong?
No, I like Tyrell Williams. I'm concerned about Travis Benjamin for the rest of the season and how that knee injury is going to affect him. And I really like Phillip Rivers going into the second half here. So I think that they could really make a nice connection there and that he could be very valuable. So he's a guy that I really like. Really, again, second half moving into the playoffs, thinking ahead a little bit. I think that there's a lot of upside there. So
Rivers. All right. We got another questionable player, Carlos Hyde. Will he be getting some playing time this weekend?
Dicey. Doesn't look good. It's funny, too, because the reports earlier were saying, oh, yeah, he was only going to miss a week. And now I think he's going on his 3rd week that he may miss some game action, including a bye. So he did practice on a limited basis on Wednesday. He just hasn't been cleared for contact just yet. Now, he is dealing with that shoulder injury like I was alluding to earlier, and he sustained that all the way back in Week 6 against the Bills. So until he's cleared, Hyde will continue to miss games. And DeJuan Harris, their backup, will get another start if Hyde can't go and would be appropriately slid up to this section. He does have a tough matchup against the Cardinals, and they're in Arizona, so always a dicey place to play in, but the opportunity presents himself. And actually, Harris had a pretty nice game last week. He was catching some balls out of the backfield, and he found the end zone. So I know it was against the Saints, but PPR-wise, he might be valuable. So
he's creeping. He's creeping up, I think.
Yeah, he's a little creeper. He's doing the creep.
Well, speaking of creeping, Tavon Austin is creeping down. He had a terrible game against the Panthers in Week 9. Had 2 targets, caught 1 for 17 yards. I have a real hard time starting him moving forward unless there are no other options. Maybe if Goff ends up ever playing in the NFL, they can rekindle something, but he's sliding way down for me. Just very inconsistent. The targets all over the place. I can't do it. I can't do it no more.
Yeah, I mean, again, he is also involved in the punting unit, and he's also involved in special teams. So he's a really fast guy. He can rip one off for a touchdown. I know against the Jets, it's not, an appealing matchup, but Jets have been pretty bad this year. And honestly, I could see a down game from them after visiting Miami and pretty much blowing that game. So Austin, he's safe because of his name, but I'm starting guys again like Tyrell Williams over him, or maybe even Quincy Enunwa over him. So
Edelman's not safe because of his name. Why should he be safe because of his name?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing keeping him safe is the $55 million contract he signed. But
exactly,
and really, both these teams are in the toilet, circling the drain and heading down quickly. So,
but the Jets are home at least.
Yes, yeah, sure.
It's got to hold a little weight.
They're in East Rutherford. All right.
New Jersey, that is. JJ Nelson, we talked about last week. We think that he's going to have a good week. I actually picked him up in one of my leagues. John, you want to remind us about him?
Yeah, I believe you mentioned him on the last podcast. I think he was one of your waiver wire pickups, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going to be their starter when the Cardinals take the field for the first time against the 49ers, coming out of their bye. And John Brown, one of their slot guys, is still not 100% healthy as well. He's actually going to be listed as questionable going into this game. So Nelson should see plenty of looks in what should be a blowout win for the Cardinals. Now, the one thing that I'm a little hesitant on with him is the David Johnson factor, because this guy could be in line for a 200-yard rushing game. That's right, 2-0-0. The 49ers, they're the worst team against the run. David Johnson is a beast. So I expect this game to be mostly running, but you got to hope that Palmer's going to throw for at least 250 in this game, and that Nelson is the majority along with Larry Fitz on the offense.
Pretty big talk.
I have a Dopes bonus point question for either of you. Do either of you know JJ Nelson's nickname?
JJ. No. See, you didn't get it because it's kind of already
that was close. It was not a bad guess. John, no, I thought you might have this, John.
I actually don't know nicknames in the NFL.
Is it obvious from his name or no?
No, it's Skeletor is his nickname. He's a scrawny little guy. Thin dude, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting.
No, did you make that up, or was that on the interwebs?
No, that's his nickname.
Okay,
come on, dude.
Respect. Hey, sometimes you throw that in there for me. I got to keep you in line.
No. Let's talk while we're in this area. Corey Coleman, receiver for Cleveland, came back last week after I believe it was a broken hand, John, broken finger bone.
Broken hand. Like yeah, he suffered a broken hand in practice going into week 3.
Right, so he came back last week against the Cowboys, 3 for 7, 41 yards, nothing sexy. He's got Baltimore this week, so he's got the game under his belt. You feel good about that. Baltimore does have the 7th-ranked passing defense, so a tough play there. However, you got Pryor probably getting double-team coverage, and it should be noted that Coleman did find the end zone twice way back in week 2 when the Browns played the Ravens. So interesting, something to think about.
Okay, and definitely a thing to watch on Thursday Night Football because we'll be following along on our Twitter, live tweeting. So if you're not on
I'm actually, I'm excited for that game. I know a lot of people are down on Thursday night, and I get it. But I don't know. For some reason, I'm kind of excited to see this game.
I was one of those people.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned that in the last podcast, but honestly,
yes,
if
you
there's
did talk about that. That's right.
But if there is a football game on, I'm watching it. So
yeah, and you know what? This really could be their last chance for like a win this year.
The Browns, you think?
Yeah.
I could see them sneaking a win against the Steelers.
Let's see. They got Ravens, Steelers, Giants, Bengals, Bills, Chargers, Steelers.
And we all know the Giants is obviously.
Yeah, the Giants are always in or out of games, no matter who they play. So I can see them blowing that game for some reason.
Well,
but,
not on the same page, Sean. Not on the same page.
No, not at all. Okay. I don't think the Browns are going winless. I think they'll finish with a 2-14 record. I think they're gonna get two wins.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe home against Cincinnati in Week 14.
There's always those wild card games, and nobody expects for them to win, and all of a sudden they just pull out a victory. So I'm not counting them out. I think they get at least 2 wins.
All right, we'll actually have to tally that one. Not that we really need to tally it, but
we can save that. I got the clip here, so I'll clip it off for anybody, and we'll make it known.
All right, and let's finish off our safe bets category with CJ
Proceeds. So the Seattle beat reporters stated on Wednesday that CJ will be more involved against the Patriots Sunday night. Kristen Michael, that tweet that blew up on our Twitter, by the way, still getting retweets and likes on that, which is crazy. It's got like almost 40 retweets and like 30 likes. So I got to mention that. But besides that touchdown he scored, that was pretty much all he did. I think he had a gain of 1 yard. He was pretty much eliminated from the team in the second half. So he's still going to get the start, but Proceeds will probably be more valuable in a PPR league because he'll be more involved in the backfield. I'm guessing the Patriots are going to put up a bunch of points, so the Seahawks may be coming from behind in this game, and which is the reason why CJ will be more involved. But I just don't see a good game out of Michael.
I agree with you. I agree on all accounts.
Well, I don't know what that is. That must be like 5 for 10, so I'm pretty much...
We're doing good.
Well, I'm sorry. The tally stopped. You guys told me you had that handled.
Well, listen, guys. I'm going to interrupt. I think this is a good point for a commercial break. Is I have to go change a diaper.
Oh, okay.
Jillian, can you take us to commercial?
I can. Well, we got to go change some diapers apparently. So we're going to take a quick break and be back with our Rollin' the Dice picks.
Want to know which fringe players you should start or sit in your fantasy leagues? Want up-to-the-minute news and analysis from the beat reporters around the league? Follow @FantasyDopes on Twitter to get your fix and fill the void of having to worry about which player will feast or famine.
Welcome back, Fantasy Dopes. We are going to just pick right up and move into our Rollin' the Dice category. And first up, we're going to talk about Tampa Bay's very own Doug Martin.
Yes, Mr. Martin is finally back. He came back to practice on Wednesday after missing the last 2 months with a hamstring injury. Bucks might just be getting him back on the practice field to get used to like drills and basically work him back into the lineup in maybe a week or so. But for now, he would be the ultimate dice roll if he winds up active against the Bears on Sunday. Peyton Barber, their, I guess, backup, but now their starter, whatever situation he might be in, he'll still have a role even if the muscle hamster is active. But I'm guessing that Martin will probably miss about the next week, maybe 2. We'll see how it goes in practice for him, but he is back on the field, and I'm sure people that have him on IR are just waiting to get him back into the lineup.
Yeah, I think I don't know how many leagues he's available in. I checked in a bunch of mine, and he's been stashed. So I don't think there's any value this week. But if you can grab him and stash him, I think there's value there. Peyton Barber, on the other hand, we had spoken about Barber and Smith. I guess it was last week. This show last week, and I was kind of higher on Barber, as I recall. And Johnny, you were more of a Smith guy. And I did say that my problem with Smith is that he had a slight frame and a little older and was more prone to injury. And look what happened. So, so Peyton Barber, who, as I'm sure you all know, is the love child of Peyton Manning and Tiki Barber, did rush 11 times, 31 yards, also snagged 4 receptions for 24 yards. So nothing to write home about, but Smith's gone now. Martin is not yet back. So it's really, I don't even know if they have another running back on the roster. So this week against Chicago, they are not the 85 defense. So I think if you have him, you play him. This might be the last week you play him. So If he punches in the end zone, he should have a great week in PPR. So I say roll the dice on Peyton Barber.
Yeah, and he'll be moved up into the safe bets category if and when Doug Martin becomes inactive for this game. That's just want to make that clear. But for now, 2 running backs, it's just a dice roll. So we'll see how that plays out later on this week. Stay tuned for our Twitter for more.
And we're rolling the dice on Jerick McKinnon. The Vikings haven't had a very good 2 weeks the last couple weeks, and they're going up against Washington this weekend. Do we think we'll see any improvements?
I am losing
No.
faith. Yeah, exactly. I'm losing faith in all of the running backs on the Vikings. McKinnon and Asiata haven't been really much of a fantasy factor since Adrian Peterson went down after undergoing surgery to repair his torn meniscus he suffered back in week 2. And now Ronnie Hillman is resurrected apparently in their offense. He's stealing time from both of these backs. So I'm just trying to stay away from any and all of these guys going forward pretty much until maybe somebody actually does something. But I do not expect any production from any of these guys going forward until basically Adrian Peterson comes back, possibly later on this year. They're saying that he might come back, but there's still no word on that just yet.
Yeah, you've heard of a 3-headed monster. This is more of a 3-headed amoeba or something along those lines. It's not sexy. So let's just move on.
No, the 3-headed monster doesn't sound very sexy either. So, all right, we'll move on to Rob Kelly was on my my waiver picks this week as well, and I know he was on John. I believe he was on yours for the week prior. How do we think things are looking for him this weekend?
Yeah, I think I had him in my waiver lineup this week as well. I believe I had him back to back. But
we both did.
Yes, we did. Head coach Jay Gruden says Kelly is going to be the early down back for the Skins when they go out to face the Vikings, who we were just talking about, on Sunday. Now, Matt Jones is still bothered by that knee injury and would have to outrun Kelly in order for him to win his job back at this point. That's according to the coach. But the split between 3 backs is going to be tough to determine from here on out. You still got Chris Thompson. He's going to get involved in their passing game. And Kelly's going to see more of their early work. So I think Kelly is more of a safer start in standard leagues, whereas Thompson might be a better PPR option. Definitely a flex guy, not a running back 1 or 2. But it's looking to pretty much shape itself out. And it's just hard to determine who's going to have a good day or not.
Yeah, I agree. Again, when you got 2, you don't have 1. When you got 3, you certainly don't have 1. So it's tough. And as good as that Vikings defense was earlier in the year, they're not in Minnesota. They're in Washington with such a bad backfield for Minnesota. I don't know how much they can keep the ball on the field. So I think that might help the backfield for Washington a little bit. But yeah, again, take your pick. I certainly Thompson in a PPR league, like you said, staying away from Matt Jones. Rob Kelly, God bless.
And yet another questionable start for this week. We've got so many. Another hamstring injury. Tevin Coleman, what is our update on him?
Yeah, he's still sidelined in practice as of Wednesday. Like you said, he's dealing with a hamstring injury. He has seen some practice with the injured Falcons players, but I don't think he's going to be suiting up this weekend against the Eagles at home. So he's probably going to be more on the doubtful side than he is on the questionable side. So Terron Ward, their backup, should be in line for change of pace back for Freeman. Tough game against the Eagles. They're pretty good against the running backs this year, so I would probably just roll Freeman out. That's about it. And we'll see what happens with Coleman. Hopefully, he becomes more of a factor going down the fantasy playoff stretch.
Yeah, Atlanta is certainly hoping to make a playoff run. They're looking strong. I see no reason why they would risk putting Coleman in. Freeman is a stud. He's good, and Terron Ward is not terrible either. So I think they have a backfield that they can compete with. Why bother exposing Coleman? Give him another week off against a tough Philadelphia team, and bring him back when he's healthy. So
and they have a bye next week, so I think that's perfect. Give him off this week. They have a bye week next week that gives him another 2 weeks.
So maybe someone you could pick up and stash since he's been injured and he's got the bye. Maybe look for him out on the waiver wire.
Michael, I like your next pick. You want to introduce this guy? I like it.
Bilal Powell? Is that who you're talking about?
That's the one.
Bilal. I feel like Powell's going to have a bit of a breakout game sooner or later. I like the way he's been running. Again, I caught a bunch of his runs while delivering my child this week. But I think this could be the week going against LA. The answer to the Jets' woes is certainly to run the ball more, and more, and not throw it. So if they work that ground game the way that they should, and yes, Powell backs up Forte, but Powell's certainly seen action. If they work the run game, the defense can stifle that woeful Rams offense, keep them off the field. I think that Powell's going to have a chance to get his looks. He's going to catch his passes and hopefully punch one in the end zone and give you a good fantasy day if you need to start him in a flex position.
It's tough to get this guy in lineups just because Forte has been running so well, and the Jets' quarterback situation isn't great. Their offense is just kind of in shambles, and give the Rams some credit. They, like you said, the defense has been pretty good, but they might be on the field for a while because their offense can't stay on the field. So it's a risky pick, but if you want to take your risk, that's certainly a guy I would take a gamble on for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Again, definitely risky, but if you're looking, you got guys on buys, you don't have a lot of options in a flex spot. I think he's someone that has a ceiling certainly this week. So he's played pretty well when he's gotten the chances. I think he caught all 4 passes, 29 receiving yards. So again, in the PPR league, if he gets in the end zone, I think he gives you a solid day.
And somebody who I'm not really sure how I feel about on this list, Antonio Andrews. Do we really think we're going to see him get that much playing time this week?
So yeah, I think with Derrick Henry most likely out for a week or two, Andrews will be the backup for DeMarco Murray. And look, Murray is a beast. He's looked just fine against the Chargers last week. He was battling that toe injury, so I wouldn't put Andrews into any lineups. But he's a decent stash guy for now. And if Murray does get hurt this weekend for some reason, then he becomes the starter, and he may see a start next week. So that's just like you're really taking a gamble there, but it's tough to start him.
Listen, if you're a handcuff guy and you have Murray, then maybe you pick Andrews up. That's about it.
And next up on our list, we're going to move down and talk about a couple of tight ends. And first up, we've got Coby Fleener. And we were just discussing how the Saints now have a lot of targets for Drew Brees to throw to. So how much time is Fleener going to get?
He probably won't get that much time. I mean, his snap count and his target share has been pretty much going down week to week. And with the emergence of Michael Thomas and Tim Hightower, I just don't see him having a good game here going up against that tough defense, as we kept talking about throughout this whole show. But he might be a sneaky play due to the fact that the Broncos may be focused more on their wide receivers than they will on the tight ends. So it's just a tough play just due to the fact that he's not getting room to work and operate.
Agreed. A big disappointment this year, Mr. Fleener. Just had never got it going. And now you're starting to see the emergence of the Saints' other tight end, Josh Hill. He had 4 catches for 40 yards last week. So, again, it was against the Niners, but still something to think about. So I can't feel good about starting Coby Fleener.
Someone else I'm not sure I feel good about, even though he had almost 100 yards last week, Zach Ertz. He's just not having that great of a season.
Wentz definitely started connected with Ertz last week, and Ertz had his best game since coming back from injury, going 97 yards on 8 catches. There definitely seemed to be a connection, as I just said there. So I feel like Ertz is ebbing upwards, as where Fleener is definitely going down. So I like Ertz this week against Atlanta. John, your thoughts?
He's just been kind of a dud until last week, and Wentz really hasn't been doing too hot since he's had that hot 3-0 start, and just pretty much coming out of that bye, they've just been kind of lost. So I think he's more of an inconsistent tight end. I do like him over Fleener. I just don't think that he is a great start in any fantasy leagues unless you absolutely need somebody because you're decimated at the tight end position.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we talked about this off the air before, and Jillian, I know you and I have talked about this. The tight end position this year has been kind of all over the place and up and down. And another guy further down the list, Hooper, had a great game last week for Atlanta. I like him a lot. Week to week, though, you just don't know what you got here.
No, you don't. You don't. The only person I felt comfortable with on my team is Delaney Walker. I have him in one of my leagues, and he's the only person I don't question in all the tight ends that I own.
Not even Hunter Henry?
No, I never got a chance to get Hunter.
Well, let's talk about him real quick.
Let's talk about Hunter.
All right.
To close out this section.
So he came back to practice on Wednesday after missing Week 9 with a knee injury. But even though he came back to a limited session, Hunter's still on track to start Week 10 against the Dolphins. Problem is, Antonio Gates, all reliable, is fully healthy and back to his old scoring ways. So we'll see how much Hunter's used in this game in San Diego. I really don't see too much production coming out of him, especially coming off this injury. And I believe he also had a concussion as well, but apparently he's over that. It's just his knees dealing with. Should be out in the field, but he's a riskier tight end 2 guy for me.
Yeah, I can't start him. I'm starting Ertz over him. I'm starting Hooper, Austin Hooper. I'm starting a bunch of guys over Hunter Henry. I just don't think he's gonna do much, but he could sneak in the end zone.
Yeah, he definitely could. He has that potential. It's just tough,
Very sneaky.
It's a tough play.
Poor Hunter. Not getting the love anymore.
No. Next year, it'll be a big shot.
Next year. That's a long time from now. And that's going to do it for our Roll in the Dice picks. And we're just going to move right along into our deep cuts. And first up, we've got Bryce Treggs.
Yeah, little Bryce had a little welcoming party in East Rutherford. He was active in his first game last Sunday. It was against the Giants. And it was because Josh Huff was busted for that marijuana. But he did make an immediate impact on the field. He caught a deep ball for 58 yards in the second quarter. He finished the day with only 2 catches, but it's a promising sign for Mr. Treggs. And with Dorial Green-Beckham and Nelson Aguilar struggling, it's very possible that he soon may make his way into the starting lineup for the Eagles. I like him as a waiver wire pick for the future going ahead. I think he has a nice solid game against the Falcons, and he becomes a top 5 guy on my list come week 11. I don't think Herbie knows about this guy, huh?
I mean, I watched it on the highlights. We'll see. We'll see. I got to see more.
All right.
And the questionable James Starks, how much practice time did he get this week?
Well, he just returned on Wednesday. It was a limited fashion. He's been silent since week 5. We kind of talked about him a little bit earlier with a knee injury, and he's just not an ideal fantasy player. I don't think he hasn't really been pretty much his whole career. So even if he was active, I just still like Montgomery more leading the team in carries.
And is there anybody else we wanted to bring up in our deep cuts before we move on to our cold cuts or, subs?
Well, I gotta throw a shout out to my boy Vance McDonald, who, as you know, I birthed. Well, I didn't birth. My wife birthed our second child on Sunday. His name is Vance James Herbert. And sure enough, Vance McDonald scored a big touchdown for San Francisco, so I had to give a shout out for him.
Aww.
That's nice.
Yeah,
Nice little
don't
connection.
take the credit for your wife there.
No, I can't. Can't do it. Can't do it.
That'll probably be something you won't forget, but your wife certainly will.
Yeah, well, she was excited at the fact that there was an NFL player named Vance. And the fact that he scored a touchdown on the day he was born
means good things are going to come.
Yeah.
I
All
like
right.
that name.
So,
Vance.
cold cuts, sandwiches.
On to the cold cuts. Taylor Gabriel, up first, Atlanta wide receiver.
Yeah, so he caught my eye the other week on Thursday night. He scored his second TD in as many weeks, and he actually did it on a running play. So he's kind of got that Ty Montgomery thing going. He caught all 5 of his targets for 52 yards, in addition to 2 rushing attempts for 24 yards. So he's definitely solidified himself as the Falcons wide receiver 3, and could have some value in deeper PPR leagues. I mean, again, we're in the deep we're in cold cuts here, but he's certainly someone I would keep an eye on moving forward. Quentin Patton, I would also mention. I mean, San Francisco wide receiver. I'm not sure what's going on with their quarterbacks. Did have over 100 yards receiving last week, but I can't see putting him in too many starting lineups. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough because you got Mohamed Sanu, you got obviously Julio Jones, Devonta Freeman, and even Terran Ward if you want to throw him in there. And Matt Ryan's just been throwing the ball to everybody this year, so it's just very volatile to trust anyone outside of those three guys. So, Gabriel's a nice little asset they have. I don't see him in any lineups unless you're in a deep 16-team league.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But again, in our deep in our cold cuts rather, those are two guys that, if you're in a deep league and you've got buys, those are two guys I would look at.
Yeah, for sure.
Well said, guys. Well said, guys. And we are going to close out with our quarterback rankings. And who do we have in our smoke 'em section this week?
I guess we'll name every guy here. We have Carson Palmer, Dak Prescott, who's going to start for the Cowboys, Marcus Mariota,
The Flying Hawaiian.
And I want to talk about this guy a bit, Jameis Winston, going up against the Bears. And to round out this list, we have Andy Dalton. But going back to Winston, he had a little bit of an injury scare Thursday night against the Falcons, but he did return to practice in full following their week 9 bye. He suffered, I think it was a knee injury. He got a little banged up from a vicious tackle. But it looked like he could have came in the last couple of minutes of the game. They were just kind of playing it safe with him. They weren't going to win, so there was no need to put him out there. But with Evans looking like he'll be ready to roll, he had a little bit of a concussion scare, and I think he's ready to be back onto the field. I think he has a chance to really sling the ball against the Bears here.
Listen, the Winston to Evans connection is fantastic. I feel like I don't own either of them, but I am like pins and needles waiting for one of them to get hurt and just derail that whole fantasy scoring machine. But I like Winston, and I think he'll be healthy. I think he's a decent play.
All right, and with our roll in the dice, guys, we've got Ben Roethlisberger. Still not sure how he's gonna be this weekend. We've got Eli Manning, Russell Wilson, my boy who finally performed for me on Monday night, Blake Bortles, Ryan Tannehill, and Kirk Cousins. Let's start off with Eli.
Yeah, Eli's coming off a hot first half. I don't want to say a hot game because he almost blew it. The Eagles intercepted him a couple of times. He had Eli dopey face on the sidelines. It was not a pretty sight until they won the game. But it looks like he's got a nice matchup in the Bengals playing Monday Night Football. You got to think Odell's going to get the ball a ton. He wants to show off his moves, and it's never easy to rely on Eli in fantasy. But he could be a nice little start to fill that fantasy stat sheet. To keep it going and hopefully keep Sterling Shepard going. He had a touchdown last week. He was a bounce back guy. We mentioned him last week on the podcast saying, we need him basically, and he came out. He put up 50 yards and a score. So I like Eli. I'm not crazy about him, but if I desperately needed somebody to start, I could see somebody looking to him.
Hard to trust Eli. Certainly Odell's been been better, but hard to trust Eli. And Ben Roethlisberger did not have a good game last week, but maybe he's a little bit healthier this week, and his knee's a little bit better. So he's certainly got the weapons. If I had to go with if I had to roll the dice on any of these guys, I'd go with Big Ben.
Ooh.
I like it just because, he's got another week of practice under his belt. He didn't look too good last week. We mentioned this on the last podcast. His knee, like I said, he looked like he had surgery 2 weeks ago. He just wasn't moving around comfortably. And like I said, this guy is the toughest SOB in any sport. So I can see him having a nice game.
Yeah, you were a big champion of him last week on the podcast, or earlier this week, I should say. And Russell Wilson, listen, had the best game of his season, I think. But
for sure.
Yeah, but so going into New England, they have a sneaky good defense. So I don't know. It's a tricky play there.
Yeah, I've actually got New England's defense in one of my leagues, but I'm a little afraid to play them this week. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. But anybody in our deep cuts that we want to mention real quick?
Yeah, I just want to bring up Jay Cutler. He's coming off a bye. He had a sneaky good game Monday night against the Vikings, who going into that game, everyone counted out the Bears, and then all of a sudden Jordan Howard rushed for over 200 yards. That's right, Herbie. 200 yards.
That's your boy.
That's right. But in order for
a league winner,
he is, and in order for Cutler to have success, his O-line's gonna have to keep him in the pocket, and he's gonna have to have Howard basically run down their throats like he did last game. So from there, he can take deep chances with Alshon and Meredith to rack up the yardage, but it's just tough to trust this guy because we can see smoking Jay Cutler on the sideline in the second quarter.
It's a true deep cut with Cutler. I don't know. I mean, really would be rolling the dice even though he's in the deep cuts. But I kind of like Flacco here on Thursday night. Certainly, anyone playing against Cleveland, you got to like. You got Steve Smith Sr. back. I could see Flacco putting up some numbers. Their backfield's terrible, but I think Dixon actually makes a move this week and asserts himself. So Flacco would be my deep cut.
And is there anybody on this cold cuts list that either of you would actually consider starting?
I wouldn't consider starting anybody. I know Alex Smith is set to return for the Chiefs. He had that concussion scare a couple of weeks ago against the Colts. Nick Foles filled in last week against the Jaguars, didn't really perform too well, so looks like Smith is back at quarterback. They're in Carolina. Not a good place to play. Don't like the way he plays football as a quarterback. He just rushes and rushes. Doesn't take chances with his wide receivers. He's missing Jeremy Maclin with a groin injury. He's most likely not going to be starting. So I still like Tyreek Hill as a wide receiver. I think he's a sneaky play, but I just don't like the quarterback situation in Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost consider Bryce Petty, who's not even on this list, over some of these guys.
Bryce Petty?
Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick is still their starter. So
yeah, but he's a little banged up, but we don't know, and he's certainly not playing well. If you listen to the New York radio, John, you'd know that Petty's knocking on that door.
Oh, I'm fully aware. I don't know.
I think Petty's got more of a chance to play than Goff.
Oh yeah, well Goff is just waiting in the wings. He's on this list just due to the fact that, it's just to keep him on everyone's radar. But I don't know when that dude's gonna start. It doesn't look like Fisher's put any confidence in him.
All right, boys, settle down now. That's gonna about do it for us tonight on our ranking show, and I think we've provided a solid list for you all tonight. And we wish you lots of luck as the playoffs creep a little bit closer. We'll have this list on our website also at fantasydopes.com just in case there's anything you forget. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at FantasyDopes for any breaking news or last-minute inactive decisions. And remember, the Bills, the Lions, the Colts, the Raiders, all on bye. Don't forget to take your guys out of your lineups this week. And gentlemen, it was so nice to have the three of us together tonight.
Lovely to be back. Lovely to be involved with both of you in this lovely podcast. And look forward to an outstanding week 10 here and seeing you guys on the Twitter at Fantasy Dopes and online and in person and all that good stuff. God bless and call your mother, everyone. Call your ma. Tell her you love her.
Kiss your baby for me.
Kiss your babies.
Yes, do your little baby dance. Change. I told you we're gonna have many poopy changes in the future
tonight
on this podcast.
The first of many.
Tonight was the inaugural.
We had one. We got through with only one, so that's good.
That's great.
Until next time.
Until next time.
I'm gonna go change my diaper now. So God bless.
Good night, guys.